teach happiness, believe it or not. So I firmly believe that happiness isn't purchased, earned, or only for a select few people. I think sometimes we tell ourselves that as well, I guess I'm just not one of the lucky ones. I honestly believe it can be taught, and I teach it in a framework where we learn new tools and then we live with them in our life.
Welcome to Soul-Led Creative Women, a podcast for women passionate about personal growth, seeking bold, brave ways to navigate life's ups and downs. I'm Sam Horton, and in this episode, I talk with Bona Normandeau. We talk about how to be happier in your life and to find more joy and resilience. Enjoy. So today I have Bona Normandeau with me. Bona is the host of the Happier You podcast, a happiness coach and a dynamic public speaker. Her mission is to empower individuals to discover their own path to happiness, guiding them to navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and joy. After a successful military career and over a decade of entrepreneurship, Bona found herself feeling lost, unfocused, and merely fitting in. A pivotal moment at a conference where the speaker asked, "What is the dream in your heart?" and Bona couldn't answer, sparked a decision to embark on a journey to uncover what living her best life truly meant. Rather than journey alone, Bona launched her podcast to share her experiences and insights, creating a space where others could feel seen and supported. She quickly discovered she wasn't alone and has been inspiring meaningful action in others ever since. So welcome, Bona.
Thanks, Sam. It's great to be here.
So jumping straight into the work you do to support people get happier, what makes up a personalized happiness formula?
Well, essentially, it is helping someone figure out what brings them joy. So connecting to themselves, knowing themselves, and just realizing that happiness, just because it works for one person, doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else. Or just because it worked for you previously, maybe it's not what you need right now. So really just helping a person connect with themselves and figure out what they need right now, what they can do for themselves right now, as opposed to maybe what's expected of them or what they think they should be doing or what should work for them. It's more about trial and error and just asking yourself, is this working for me? Am I enjoying this? And helping people narrow that down for right now, not worrying about the future, not worrying about the past, but what works for me right now.
So cultivating more presence?
More presence, but also I think one of the things I really like is self-reflection and just really connecting to yourself and sort of a constant conversation with yourself saying, did that work for me? And if it did, why? And if it didn't, why not? Those kind of things. So not just being present in the moment, but sort of being present in your life, like showing up and saying, this is the kind of day I want to have, and actively seeking it and going for it, basically.
Sure. It sounds like, curiosity must play a big part in that as well, getting curious about why, what, how you can create more happiness for yourself.
Yeah, curiosity is a great word, actually. Yeah, because it is a lot of, isn't that interesting, right? I wonder why that worked for me, or I wonder why that didn't, or I wonder why I had this reaction.
And so I'm assuming that creativity forms quite a big component of, cultivating long-lasting happiness in life. How does creativity feature in the work that you're doing to support?
Well, so I have to say, Sam, I was very excited when we connected because creativity, understanding the power of creativity is new for me. So I love that it's your path in life to help people figure that out because, again, this is all new to me. So I love sharing this with the people I work with too, from a total newbie standpoint. So it happened for me. I was reading the book. Oh, it's one of the Brene Brown books. And I knew it before I came on the podcast, but The Gifts of Imperfection. And she talks about the power of creativity and play. And so when I was first starting this journey for myself, I basically, I read her book and I just started trying these things myself. And I did a podcast on it. I talked about the power of creativity and play and ways to add it into your life. And I had a friend pop up and say, "Hey, I'm doing this painting class. Do you want to come with me?" And I knew the power of creativity from reading Brene Brown's book. So I thought, oh, this scares me, but yes, let's go for it. Let's try it. And it was the middle of COVID. So we ordered, some paints online, and I went to an easel, not an easel, just what do I paint
Canvas.
on? Help me. Thank you.
Canvas.
A canvas from Michael's, which is just an art store here in Canada. And we got it all delivered to our door, or it was a drive-by pickup, whatever it was. And so it was made really easy. Like the barriers to entry were very simple. And it was online, and a friend was doing it with me. And I realized that I had fun. I really had zero belief that it was going to come out positive. But what happened was I actually created something beautiful, much to my surprise. And I realized that the power of creativity is in the process, is of not knowing how it's going to turn out and being flexible, trying new things, and pushing through discomfort and saying, okay, I'm just going to trust that this is going to turn out however it's going to turn out, and I'm going to have fun with it. And so what happened there for me was I had the theory of creativity and play, and then I put it into action. And so it builds a muscle. It's that muscle of understanding that the power is in the journey, not the finished product. It's really about enjoying the process, pushing through the discomfort, being flexible, trying something new. That kind of is a metaphor for life, right?
Mhm.
Is just go for it and try it. Like, what's the worst that gonna happen? You can paint over it and try again, or, one teacher even taught us how to like almost erase on a canvas, which I didn't know you could do, right? So yeah, so creativity for me is something that I really love encouraging people to try whatever their creativity is, because there's so much to be learned in the process of creating that I consider creativity a happiness tool, that it is something that you want to get yourself to do, even if it's uncomfortable, because there's joy in the process and there's so much to be learned.
But people do resist, kind of leaning into it as well. How do you sort of support people with any limiting beliefs that they might have in relation to getting creative?
Well, again, I think because I still have resistance. So as much as
Mm.
I know it's good for me, and I do eventually enjoy the process, it's easy for me to kind of put myself in the other person's shoes and say, what if we just try? And what's sort of the smallest bite-sized thing that we can try? Like for me, doing it with friends and making it an event, you don't back out. It's an event that you want to spend time with your friends and do it together. So that helps. So I look at ways to encourage people and just really talk them through, how can you make it happen? Like, what's the easiest way? And what resistance are you going to come up with, right? Like, what excuses are you going to find? And then I think what is as important, so talking through what the resistance that's going to come, but then also after it's done, journaling, or at least talking through, what did you get out of it? What are the
Mhm.
positive points? And really shining a light on the resistance is part of it, and knowing that that's going to come up and saying, that's okay. That's your natural barrier to discomfort, is to find excuses. But look at what happened on the other side. And again, it's not just creativity, it's life, right?
Mm.
Every sort of challenge that we have, if we kind of prepare for it, pack our bags for the resistance that's going to happen. And then afterwards, just acknowledge
Mm.
sort of every battle that we fought to get there, and celebrate
Mm.
all the fun things that happened. It gets us ready for next time. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I think it's just sort of not pretending that it's easy for everyone, because the people it's easy for, it's not the same journey that they go on. It's the
Yeah.
people who it scares them, it's uncomfortable. Being imperfect is often what scares people. If they can't
Mm.
create something beautiful, that's what holds them back. But if we can kind of talk through, yeah, let's just not worry about being perfect, and let's
Mm.
talk about what we can get out of it, and
Mm.
what good things are going to come from it. And then that, I think, helps people.
Yeah, and reflection, like you said, is really powerful in that, because I think if you spend time reflecting on it, you realize that actually, even though you might not be that happy with the outcome, you actually did gain a lot from the process, right? So
E-
that
Exactly.
reflection piece is really helpful in kind of bringing it all together, which then gives you kind of the confidence to continue because you realize that you did get something out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm. So in terms of, the work you do as a happiness coach, what are the common catalysts for people realizing that they need to feel happier and they want someone to support them with that?
So it's usually one of two things. So one is you're doing things to be happier, but you don't feel like it's working or it's working enough. So you're kind of stuck and you're not sure what you're doing wrong. And you just need help sort of breaking through what's going to work for you. The other person is they just don't even know where to start. Like they're just kind of in a funk and they're like I said, it's not that there's not information out there, but it's taking that first step and knowing which first step is going to work for you. It scares people and they're overwhelmed. And that's where so those are my two people. They're kind of the one's frustrated and the one is sort of lost and just not sure where to start.
Okay. And so when you begin a journey with people, then, how do you take them on that journey? And what are the sort of key milestones that they might move through, on that happiness journey?
So I teach happiness, believe it or not. So I firmly believe that happiness isn't purchased, earned, or only for a select few people. I think sometimes we tell ourselves that as a well, I guess I'm just not one of the lucky ones. I honestly believe it can be taught, and I teach it in a framework where we learn new tools and then we live with them in our life, and then we level up. And so how I start people is, okay, well, let's learn some tools. And from those tools, we're going to learn them, we're going to talk about them, we're going to try them. And it doesn't have to be for 2 months. It can just be for a few weeks. We're going to try these different things. And then we're going to say, okay, what works best for me? And
Mm.
so I believe that there's sort of some basics that we can all try and use. And we might not all use them the same way, but they're a tool that the basics, I think, are the easiest ones to put in our life to start to get that immediate momentum, to start feeling, oh, yeah, yeah, this feels good. And even though I might not feel like doing that today, I know that this feels good. And so being
Mhm.
okay with having more of that. And so the milestones are kind of the basics, knowing which ones are your go tos and getting comfortable putting them in your life. And then the next milestone is usually the level up part. So your relationship with yourself and learning to journal and acknowledge and support yourself through your journey. And that, the journaling in and of itself is it's its own journey because there's different levels. And so there's very basic, easy ways to start, which I think is part of getting to know yourself is journaling. And sometimes that could just be really small things like gratitude and just knowing what you're grateful for. And there's exercises you can do to help you see beautiful things in your life that maybe you're overlooking, right? Things like that. And yeah, and I think just if we're talking milestones, then there's sort of the next one is sort of self-acceptance and self-love and saying, I'm okay just how I am. I can work on myself, but I love and acknowledge the beautiful, unique, imperfect person that I am right now. And learning to be on this journey with that beautiful person is is happiness. Is
Mm.
is knowing that we're okay, me and this unique person that I've accepted. And I can learn and grow and try more, have more confidence to do things. But ultimately, I'm okay with being me and being
Mhm.
imperfectly me.
Mm. So just reflecting on sort of the beginning sort of phase that you described, in that way you're trying to find the things that bring this person joy, whatever that might look like, whether it's creative stuff or, I don't know, going on holiday more or what are the sort of examples, in terms of the tools that people come up with that really support them, at the beginning of that journey where they're embracing more happiness and more joy?
Yeah. So, such a great question, Sam. I love that because, going on holiday more is not necessarily easy to fit into your life, right? And so the basics are things like gratitude, like honestly knowing how to have a good practice that works for you. And again, like I said, it's not the same for everyone, but being aware that this is a tool that you can put into your life in less, let's be honest, in less than a minute a day, right? Also small wins, and small wins is about acknowledging all the little things that you do in a day that you've to this point probably taken for granted or overlooked or said that's not big enough to celebrate, and learning to find joy in, that box of things that's been meaning to go to a donation that's been sitting by your front door and bugging you for a month and a half. The day you take it, that is something to be celebrated because the 45 days before that, you didn't do it. So just
Yeah.
learning to celebrate wins because it builds momentum. Small things like that. And these are all things that are they're small and easy to add into your life. You get more comfortable with happiness. And you start to see where it doesn't have to be an event. One of
Mm.
the other things that I love teaching people is recharge activities. And so those are
Mhm.
the things that just lift you up. And they can be, for some people, it's a creative endeavor that really lifts them up. For other people, they have to learn what their creative endeavor is that lifts them up.
Yes.
But it can also be something as small as dancing to your favorite 80s hairband. It just, middle of the day, I've got 3 minutes. I need to shake things up. I need a little boost. And so you put yourself where nobody can see you, you crank the tunes and you just go, your 13-year-old self just cuts loose kind of thing, right?
Mm.
But it could just be a walk in nature. So it's just getting people again to connect to themselves and say,
Mhm.
okay, what can I fit in my busy life that lifts me up? And it doesn't have to be this big long holiday. It doesn't have to cost
Mhm.
any money, but
Mhm.
I have control over it and I can spice up my life with these very small things, but they're small but powerful.
I love that. Love the simplicity and all of that. So, flipping this around a little bit. So, what do you think about, in order to build true happiness, do we need to also then remove things from our life or let go of things, that are really holding us back from being happier? How does that sort of feature in the work that you do?
So there's two ways to look at things. If you fill up your cup with as many good things as you can, there's going to naturally be some things that there isn't room for. And so that can be the letting go. And it can be a formal, I'm ready to let go of this. Or it can just be you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, wow, look at that. I didn't think about that, or I didn't hold on to that frustration or feeling, or I haven't spent as much time with this person who completely rubs me the wrong way and robs me of joy. So the way I look at it is if we focus on adding good things into our life, what it does is it empowers us to help us make those decisions. Because I find that letting go often happens not necessarily in the beginning, more once we get more comfortable with this and we start journaling and communicating with ourselves about what we don't want and moving it out. So it's a process. I don't think it usually happens. Well, it doesn't happen the same for everyone. And often in the beginning, it's kind of letting things go is sometimes a boundary thing. And that's not
Mhm.
usually our first steps, right? Our
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
steps are just getting to know ourselves and getting more comfortable with this happiness thing and letting more of it in, I think is where it
Mm.
starts. And then we get to the moving things out part.
Mm. So tell us a bit about your own happiness journey then. What did your journey look like?
So my journey looked like that, like you were telling the story in the beginning where I was at the conference and the speaker said, "What's the dream in your heart?" And ultimately there was this big gaping hole. Like I didn't know where to start. I was the person who I felt like there was something wrong with me. Like everybody else in the conference knew something that I didn't know.
Mhm.
And I I went into this introspection, like, hold on, this isn't right. I don't like feeling like this, but what do I do about it? And so I went on my own personal journey. And what happened in the middle of that was getting to know myself. I decided that I needed to learn to love myself. And that really scared me. I couldn't even say that out loud, but I knew in my head that was where I was going. So I decided I would start to get to know myself and learn to like myself. And so that Brene Brown book really weighed heavily or played a big part in my journey because I took those tools that she talked about and I started trying them, and then I journaled about them. How do I feel about this? And and what do I want more of this? How can this work for me? I didn't like that, whatever. And and so then in the middle of that is when the podcast came to be, because I thought, what if I'm not alone? Like, what if there's other women out there just like me who think there's something wrong with them, when what it is we're just, it's, square peg in a round hole. Like, what kind of we are taught to believe works for everyone doesn't work for us, but it doesn't mean we're defective. It just means we haven't figured out what works for us yet. So then I started the podcast and I started sharing my goofy stories. And, I blame Brene Brown because it was, again, in her book, I read this quote that says, you need to be brave with your life so others can be brave with theirs. Because I really just
Mm.
wanted to keep my journey safe and protected so no one could make fun of me or laugh at me. But I kept thinking, what if there's somebody else out there who needs to know that they're not alone?
Yeah.
And so my podcast episodes were me sharing my really humble journey of figuring this out, what worked for me, what didn't, what I was reading in the literature and how I was trying it. And one of my funniest stories is learning about small wins. I decided to test it by flossing my teeth because I'd always wanted to be a tooth flosser. And these are goofy stories that you don't normally share with other people, maybe your spouse, maybe your children, you have a good laugh at the table. But I'm like, well, if I can be humble enough to just share my goofy stories, if it resonates with one other person, then yay. I've helped
Mm.
somebody else through this awful feeling of I'm defective, there's something wrong with me. Happiness is for other people. So
And it's the Brene Brown thing, isn't it? There's power in the vulnerability because, I mean, you must have gone on a journey of feeling really exposed, when you started that podcast journey.
yes, and I mean, you have a podcast. I still feel exposed, right? Like, because you are sharing so much of yourself and you honestly don't know who's actually hearing it. Like, in
Mm.
the beginning, people would say, oh, they'd say something about my life. And I'm like, how do you know that? They're like, well, you mentioned it on the podcast. Oh, right. That podcast thing, right? Like, it really is putting your life out there. And because, when you share, you're in the safety of your home
Mhm.
and you're just telling stories, but you don't know who's really listening. So yeah, it's very vulnerable. And I think I'm just getting more comfortable with being vulnerable. And
Yeah.
what I found, the best advice I got when I was starting out, I did a bunch of research, and one of the ladies said, is to start a community, even like just on Facebook or something, so that you're not alone. So you don't always feel like you're
Mhm.
not talking into the void.
Mhm.
And this beautiful thing happens, Sam, is, and I teach this as a happiness tool as well, is who are you surrounding yourself with?
Mhm.
And so, because when you go to make a change in your life, you're going to make some people uncomfortable when you start doing new things,
Mhm.
and they will be vocal about it. So it's really important to surround yourself with people who are cheering you on
Yeah.
too. And so that Facebook community saved me, because as I was being vulnerable, I got so much love back. I realized I wasn't alone, right? That feeling resonated with so many people,
Mm.
and it just kept me going, and it let me be braver because I knew I wasn't alone, and that when I share my goofiness, somebody can benefit from it. So
Yeah, it's so powerful, it's beautiful. And so you talked about sort of creativity being, a new concept in terms of the connection between happiness and creativity. How important is creativity for you now, moving forward on your journey?
so I still find that there is a resistance for me in my creative endeavors. But what happens is I remember the power of it. And I think one of the most powerful things that I read is how it actually makes connections in your brain
Mhm.
to help you with struggles down the road. And one of the things I've found is that there is a strong connection between resilience and happiness. So if you can figure out how to bring more happy into your life, you can also figure out how to help yourself through those really tough times.
Mhm.
They're the same tools. It's
Mhm.
fascinating.
Mhm.
And so I still find resistance because the perfectionist in me is scared of being imperfect. And so I find that I force myself or I create situations for myself to continue to work this muscle because I know it's good for me. I know it's powerful. And in those reflections afterward, there's so many beautiful things that come from it
Mm.
that that I have to work at it. And I always admire people where it's easy for them. And I surround myself with those people because they encourage me. They've learned this muscle to not be so hard on themselves, to
Mm.
enjoy the process, right? So I have my art buddies that
Mhm.
really, we have fun together. They encourage me. And so again, it's that community who are you surrounding yourself with. And
Mm.
yeah, so I think it is such a beautiful muscle. And like I said, it is such a part of my happiness journey. It was one of the biggest ahas I had on my journey.
Okay.
So it's extra special to me, but I also still have to work at it. It's not easy. Just because I know it's good for me doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
always easy.
Oh, there's a lot of resistance to creative work, it's yeah, it's a lot of resistance, and I think, it's good for us, right? So, of course, we're gonna resist it.
Right?
Yeah, and, ultimately, it's this busy part of our brain that tells us, all the reasons why we shouldn't do it and gets us into a state where we're comparing ourselves to others and we're really fixated on the outcome of things. We're conditioned to believe that the outcome is more important than anything else. But yeah, I mean, it's so common to have, resistance. I have resistance, to getting into my creative time. So, what does your personal self care routine look like then? In terms of how you maintain your own happiness.
Yeah, so it is always changing and evolving because I'm still learning and growing, but the basics are most definitely gratitude. It is part of my everyday, whether it's written or thought or talked about at the dinner table, we often share our gratitudes. I'm also a big fan of small wins. It is such a beautiful tool that really I connected with. And so I not only love celebrating my small wins, but other people's. So I get a lot of joy from that. Journaling is a big part of mine. That was such a huge discovery. And so it's constantly supporting me through my ups and downs. So just because, I teach happiness doesn't mean that my life roller coaster doesn't go up and down, right?
Mhm.
So I just have lots of tools to pull on. Definitely, I mentioned this earlier too, the recharge activities, that's a big one for me. So I actually make a point that when I'm going into a particularly busy and stressful time, I'm constantly asking myself, what can I do for myself in this schedule? Like, where can I
Mm.
put my recharge activities, whether they be those little micro ones, dancing by myself, or, a good sweaty workout, those kind of things. So I'm constantly making sure that I'm connecting and recharging my batteries. And those are the basics, but I also one that I don't talk about, I think, enough is sleep. So I discovered a long time ago that I am a much nicer person and a better version of myself when I protect my sleep and take care of myself. So
Mhm.
that one is a non-negotiable for me. And yeah, so that's a big one. I mean, I mean, I use them
Yeah.
all, but I think the biggest one to kind of sum it all up is self-awareness. And so
Mhm.
constantly asking myself, "What do I need?" And the self-compassion of how can I help myself through this struggle, I think are sort of the underlying foundation of everything
And
that I
it's
do.
okay if that changes day to day, right? Like, it doesn't
That's
need to
exactly
be
it.
you don't need to have
Yeah,
this fixed, like, to-do list to work through. I think people get lost in that, and, their self-care then becomes another thing, another set of things they have to do, right?
on the to-do
To
list,
tick off.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so for all the women who want to feel more happiness, and happier in their lives, what powerful questions would you have them ask themselves today?
So, I often tell people, if you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, what could be one good thing that can come out of this day that I can control, right? So like winning the lottery doesn't count. We're not going to lose 20 pounds in a day. What is something today that I can do that will bring me joy? And if you ask yourself that every day, you'll start to learn and grow as to like, what do I need? What do I want? What brings me joy? The other one is how much time do I have for myself? So if you look at your day and you're constantly running from one thing to the next, where is time in your day that you can carve something out for yourself? And if you could, what would that be? And my questions really are all about getting women to connect with themselves and know themselves and start to realize that the sooner that they connect, as sooner as they know who they are and what they want. And that sounds really big. So that's why the small questions, what's one thing I can do today? And so looking at it from bite-sized pieces, if you look at happiness as a way to invite a little bit more happiness into your life every day, it's a muscle that is going to get stronger as you work on it. So asking yourself what can I do to add a little bit of joy today, I think is a great place to start, because they're asking themselves, they're not saying, what is my neighbor doing? What is my sister doing? What do I think I should be doing? It is, what can I control in my life today?
And not thinking too far ahead with it either, right? So it's
No,
literally
exactly.
today.
Today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how can people get to know you better, Bona, and get a real feel for the work that you're doing?
So my podcast, definitely, The Happier You, it's out there on anywhere you listen to your podcast. Also, I talked about gratitude, and I'm a firm believer in gratitude. So I have a 14-day gratitude challenge where it just encourages people. It's got fun quotes, good ideas, some thoughts by me, and it's just 14 days. A little email pops into your inbox, and that you can find that on my website at thehappier.you.net. And yeah, just on the Work with Bona page, check it out. I think it's a great place to start if you're stuck and you're not sure where to start. But if nothing else, come join us on the podcast and check it out, because every 2 weeks I'm challenging you to try something new in your happiness journey. So
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today. Really love chatting with you. Thanks so much.
thanks for having me, Sam. This was a lot of fun.
Start reconnecting with your inner creative magic with a powerful 10-minute meditation. This meditation is designed to help you reconnect to yourself, your creativity, and spark your inner wisdom by guiding you to discover your own unique and personal sacred creative space as you tune into your intuition. Please head to samhorton.co/gift.